Well, is it 11? Looks like it is. So good morning. Thank you for joining us for our Tuesday Talent Series today on October 17th. We are super excited today to have Chalice Springfield and her session, Getting Out of Your Comfort Zone at Work. So I know we're all super excited to hear about that. I'd love to talk with you first about our sponsor. Plant Moran is the sponsor of our Tuesday Talent Series. Plant Moran is among the nation's largest accounting, tax, consulting, and wealth management firms and provides a full line of services to organizations in the following industries: manufacturing and distribution, financial services, service, healthcare, private equity, public sector, real estate, construction, and energy. Plant Moran has a staff of more than 3,300 professionals throughout the United States, with international offices in Shanghai, China, Mumbai, India, Tokyo, Japan, and Monterrey, Mexico. In Colorado, Plant Moran has served its Colorado clients for more than 40 years, with offices in Broomfield, Denver, and Fort Collins. Plant Moran has been recognized by a number of organizations, including Fortune magazine, as one of the country's best places to work. For more information, visit plantmoran.com. So thank you again to our sponsor. And now let's get on to this amazing session with Chalice. Chalice Springfield is a passionate and inspiring motivational speaker, personal coach, and trainer. She has over 20 years of experience in the area of motivational speaking and received certified training as a personal coach. She has spoken at national conferences and in Colorado for various groups, nonprofits, and businesses. Chalice believes in and embodies a life that is full of mondo beyondo possibilities, where daring greatly and being green and growing, not ripe and rotten, are routine items on her to-do list. She is the founder of Unstoppable Curiosity, a company dedicated to helping individuals and teams reach their full potential. Chalice is a great friend and an amazing person, and we are grateful to have her in Northern Colorado and super excited that she's presenting today. So Chalice, I'll let you take it away.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. It's good to see everybody. Hopefully you're wide awake and bushy-tailed. I think people showing up for this kind of conversation, getting out of your comfort zone, you've already arrived. Good job. Right, you're already out of your comfort zone. So hopefully we'll have some tips. I know that if you're new to this series, if this is the first time, I know that the Chamber, thank you, the Chamber, Fort Collins Chamber of Commerce, for having me. They'll send the PDF out afterwards of the slides. So that's always a nice benefit, I think, when you can get the slide deck and have that for reference later. So I'm going to stop your screen share there, Yvonne, and share mine. Can everybody see that? Thumbs up. Okay, good. Thanks for all the people that are on screen. That's great. Thank you. Sometimes you always feel like you're talking to just an empty screen, when we can't see you. So if you want to come on screen, even if your hair is not done, or you're like, I'm worried my cat's going to walk in because this is my home office. So if it happens, we'll just push Jack off the desk and go from there. So, as the introduction talked about, I just thought I would just share a little bit about myself. This is my husband and I. We went to visit Alaska last year. I thought Alaska was going to be the same as Colorado. Anybody been to Alaska? Yeah, it's not the same as Colorado. Thank you very much. It's like totally different than Colorado. Yes, they do have mountains that are like, they have the third largest mountain in the entire world. And they have glaciers and oceans and whales, which all of, most of which we don't have. I have two cats. I don't have any kiddos. These are my two cats, Bob and Jack. If they make an appearance, we'll buy a lottery ticket or something. They always want to get on the Zoom screen. An interesting fact about myself is I don't drink coffee, but I do drink Sonic every day. I have a major Diet Coke habit, Diet Coke with lime. They know me so well here at the two Sonics in town that if I order something different, they're like, we didn't fill your order because we thought you made a mistake at what you ordered. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is kind of embarrassing and very funny. as Yvonne mentioned, I own a good company called Unstoppable Curiosity that does coaching and training programs like this, also one-on-one coaching. But for 30 years, I spent most of my career in the real estate industry. And so I managed a company in Greeley, a fairly large real estate company called Sears Real Estate. I also worked at a title company and in mortgage lending. And then about 3 years ago, I left and went and did, in addition to my part-time coaching and training that's now full-time, I worked at Sunrise Community Health, which is very similar to Salud, if you know Salud, a community health center, and I did communications and marketing and development for them. So the reason Kermit's on the screen, I believe in being green and growing, not ripe and rotten. And he always reminds me to be green. So good job for showing up for something that might get you a little bit out of your comfort zone today, which is what you're all signed up for. So the goal for today, I always have three goals. Number one, have at least one takeaway. So I'll ask at the end if you had any takeaways. Let's be interactive and engaging, because I don't know about you, but just being on webinars like this, it's like you could just watch this taped or look at it later, but wouldn't it be fun if we could engage a little bit and have fun? Is anybody up for fun? At least the people I can see are shaking their head yes, so this is good. All the other people are like, I think I'm up for fun, but I got to continue to do some emails or listen in the background. So have fun while you're at it. I think that's good. So let's get started. Enough about me. What you really came for is to talk about growth and getting uncomfortable, right? And growing it in the workplace. So I love this chart, although I love and hate it at the same time because it's really a hard one. So this comes from Positive Psychology website, and I love how they break down really how we get to the growth zone. So if you look at the left-hand side of the chart, it talks about where most of us are really good at. We know how to do the status quo really well, right? We know how to be in our comfort zone. We feel safe, we feel in control, but it's probably not where our goals and some of the things that we need to risk doing lie. That lies more on the right-hand side of the chart. So, but look what you have to go through, you guys, to get to the growth zone. Okay, I don't know about you, but I don't really want to sign up for the fear zone, or the learning zone sounds more attractive. But when you look at the fear zone, you're affected by other people's opinions, you find excuses, maybe there's a lack of self-confidence, which when you think about when you're growing, all of that happens, right? Some imposter syndrome might sneak in there. And as I mentioned, the learning zone sounds better. Look what you have to deal with, challenges and problems every day when you're in the learning zone, acquiring new skills, which sounds great, except then when I have to learn new technology and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do it, right? I don't want to be in the learning zone anymore. And it extends your comfort zone. So think of all of this like a rubber band that once we get more and more, out of the comfort zone, it resets and we get a new comfort zone and have to go through the process again to get to the growth zone, which is where our purpose is, where oftentimes our dreams and our goals lie and our aspirations. So I think this makes sense. And this little lizard we're going to talk about, this is your lizard brain, your reptilian brain that is responsible for fight, flight, freeze. And we're going to talk about that darn lizard brain here in a minute and why it inhibits our growth and what we can do to kind of have some tools about getting not rid of it, because not having an amygdala is kind of grounds for a psychopath usually, but you need an amygdala to help you remember when you're that walking down the alley is dangerous, but we don't need it to get overactive. So I love this picture. This picture I actually made it into a sticker. And when I was first in my real estate career, my very first year, I put this little sticky note, not with this picture, but with this little sticky note that says the learning occurs in the challenge on my monitor. Because that year I was totally in the growth zone basically every day. So 3 weeks after I arrived at Sears Real Estate, we got robbed. I was like, oh my gosh, somebody threw a chair through a window and took some computers, some laptops, and luckily no money or anything. But that was a big, big snow globe shaker. A few months later, we had to shut our Windsor office. And so, the economy was really bad. It was 2006. So I had to figure out how to rent that. And our cash flow was terrible, so much so that I was floating my paycheck in order to pay the other staff members, because I was like, oh my gosh, we got to pay them. And so I wouldn't cash my check until our cash flow was more positive. We had a domestic violence issue in our office. Our receptionist experienced domestic violence. And so that was really scary. And kind of what do we do about that? And to top it all off, after my 1 year anniversary on my birthday, one of my agents passed away unexpectedly. And so all of that in 1 year, I felt like I was in the learning and the fear zone constantly. And I had to remind myself that the learning occurs in the challenge. And that is this picture. So this picture is actually a picture of the Mississippi Delta. So on the left-hand side, where you can see it's a picture from space, is actually the state of Mississippi, where the Mississippi River literally runs into the ocean. And all of this green, white, kind of turquoise color is the Mississippi Delta. The word delta means change, right? In Greek, it means change. And so things grow in the delta. Learning grows and is fostered in the delta, where things are changing, much more so than just when you're in the river or just in the ocean. So if you're in the messy middle, right, which is usually what's happening when you're growing, you're like, oh my gosh, this is hard, this is a challenge. When you're in the messy middle, typically you're in the delta and you're in that learning zone or that fear zone outside of your comfort zone. So know that it's working. That's what I'm trying to say. When you're outside of your comfort zone and you're in that messy middle and the delta's happening, it means you're actually extending and growing skills and who you are. So let's talk about that lizard brain. It's so problematic. We can blame everything on it, right? So your lizard brain is really a problem when it comes to growing. It is your amygdala. And as I mentioned, it's about the size of an almond at the base of your brain, and it's responsible for keeping you safe. That's the only job that the amygdala has. It's you've heard of this mostly as fight, flight, freeze. So when you're in a dangerous situation, its only job is to keep you safe, and oftentimes is responsible for those kinds of behaviors where we're like, oh, combative, or we want to flee, or we just want to freeze because we're just not sure what to do. The challenge is that it's always going to argue for your status quo, even when it's not benefiting you, or even when you want to grow beyond your status quo, because it's unsafe for the amygdala, right? It's unknown, and it doesn't understand that even on the other side of that fear and learning zone, you have things that you want to accomplish. But it's like only goal is to keep you safe, and so we'll always argue for your comfort zone. So this is why we have resistance when there are things that are new or different. And why, when new or different things come along and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in the messy middle, this is uncomfortable, it's difficult, I just want to run away, that means it's working. So don't, lean into those behaviors, because that means that you're resisting your amygdala, trying to keep you safe and in your comfort zone, and not be in a growing mode. So let's talk about the definition of a growth mindset. Many of you might be familiar with this. It's from Carol Dweck's book it's actually called Mindset. And she talks about the difference between having a growth and a fixed mindset. So a growth mindset really is understanding that your abilities and your talents and your knowledge can be developed. So it's not a static thing. It's not something like, oh, Sarah was given this and she's stuck with it forever. She can't modify or change her abilities or her talents. So people with a growth mindset believe that they can get smarter, more intelligent, and not just intelligent from a smarts perspective, like, our brains, but also emotional intelligence, also growing our talents and our compassion and our skills. All of those, I think, would be in that same category. A fixed mindset is really one that just assumes that your talents and abilities are relatively fixed, that you can't really modify that to too much extent one way or the other. People would say you either have it or you don't, right? So a fixed mindset can be a little bit dangerous when we're looking to grow and when we're looking to develop our skills at work, obviously, because things are always changing probably in our work situations, and it's a dynamic, fluid situation. If you have a fixed mindset, you may be stuck a little bit. Now, here's the thing. While we would all like to think that we always have a growth mindset, including me, oh my gosh, I always have a growth mindset. It's not true, right? We all get fixed at certain times, and there's certain areas where we're more growth mindset, but to just accept that, having a fixed mindset does creep in on us is where the growth opportunity lies, because knowing where we might need to have more of a growth mindset, where we might be a little bit more fixed, is helpful, and then we can go to work on it. So again, the main difference between the two, one believes that your talents or skills or abilities are set. You have it or you don't. That's a fixed mindset. And the other one is that we do have the ability to change. And so I feel like that's more inspiring, don't you? Like the growth mindset's way more inspiring, especially with things that you want to accomplish in your life. Okay. So sometimes people get a little hung up. We're not going to spend time reading this slide. I always hate it when people read the slides to you, don't you? So the concept of intelligence from Carol Dweck's book could be replaced with any of these words, right? So sometimes people get a little hung up that that's just about the only thing that we can grow is our brains or our intelligence or our IQ. And I don't think that's really true. I think all of these could be inserted. So we might have a growth mindset as it relates to our motivation, as it relates to, again, our empathy, as it relates to our emotional intelligence. So all of these words could also be swapped out in terms of what we can modify and grow and have a growth mindset for than just intelligence. So this slide, I think, just kind of breaks down easily what the concept of fixed versus growth mindset might be. And for me, it helps me identify where I might be more in a fixed mindset at work, right? And so I'm going to share some of the ideas about that with you. But you can see on the left-hand side what fixed mindset might look like. It might be on proving yourself. So if you're bumping up against somebody and you're more in a right, wrong kind of conversation, that might indicate some fixed mindset. Can't accept failures or mistakes, right? Versus on the growth mindset, really looking to have accepting constructive criticism or feedback, sometimes negative feedback, right? Fixed mindset obviously is going to shy away from familiar things. You believe talent is static, avoid challenges. You're just in that comfort zone. And as I mentioned, as much as we would all like to believe that we're never in a fixed mindset, it's just not true. It creeps in, and there are plenty of places in our work and or just in our lives in general where we could have more of an open mindset or a growth mindset, which would require the things on the right? Embracing constructive feedback, focusing on the process, not the end result, stepping out of your comfort zone, and again, believe that talent is ever improving. So this is just, I think, a simple way to think, oh, this is where I could maybe be green and growing, not ripe and rotten. Where Kermit, it's not easy being green, where that growth mindset, you might embrace that a little bit more. I don't know about you, but I always like to hear about stories and of people that have had a growth mindset or versus a fixed mindset. And so is anybody familiar with Eric Weihenmayer? It's hard, his name's a hard one to say. So he's actually a Colorado guy. And he is on May 25th of 2001, he was the first visually impaired person to summit Mount Everest. What? Summit Mount Everest, and he's blind, right? He's totally visually impaired. Since then, he's actually summited all of the tallest mountains or peaks on all of the continents. So it's not just first of all, I don't even know how he did Mount Everest, right? Like that's a feat that I can't even imagine doing as a somebody that's not visually impaired, but he's gone to the highest point on every continent. That is just fascinating, right? So I think the inspiring story about this is that, with somebody with a visual impairment, they probably don't normally pick mountain climbing as an activity that they would like to do, right? And he was like, I'm doing it. And so he totally had a growth mindset and didn't let it stop him. Because sometimes our mindset about what we can and can't do might relate to circumstances that we're experiencing, right? It could be circumstances at work. It could be circumstances with our bodies or our containers like his is. But he didn't let it stop him. So I think that's kind of an inspiring story. And from Colorado. That's awesome too. He lives in Denver. Okay, all of you know Oprah, right? Do you know the story behind Oprah? Oh my gosh. So Oprah was hired, right? She was a speech and communication major at Tennessee State University. She gets hired as a job to co-anchor the evening news. And just 7.5 months after she was hired, they fired her. And you know what they said? They said, we think you're unfit for television. What? Oprah, right? Like, I guess she totally proved them wrong. But how many times have you been told no, or have you like experienced kind of maybe a setback like that and been like, oh, well, I guess I'm just unfit for that, or somebody doesn't believe in me, and so I'm just going to give up on it? There's a place to look at where you might be having a fixed mindset. I mean, she's like obviously one of the largest television stars, ever, and created a mega company. Maybe she has that philosophy. Tell me no, watch me go. I like that one. Okay, and then Michael Jordan, the movie. I need to watch the movie that came out recently about him. Anybody know Michael Jordan's story? His story, I think, is kind of fascinating. He did not make the varsity basketball team on his high school. They put him on the JV team, and like just didn't feel like he was fit for the. Hello, Michael Jordan, one of the best NBA players ever, did not make his varsity basketball team. And so when you think about that fixed mindset, right, that says you either have it or you don't, even Michael Jordan experienced needing to have a growth mindset. After he did that, after he was kind of put on the JV team instead of the varsity team, it's my understanding that he worked even harder than he ever had because of that setback, because of being told no, that he couldn't be on the varsity team. And he says this. I wrote down this quote: "Whenever I was working out and got tired and figured I ought to stop, I'd close my eyes and see that list in the locker room without my name on it, the varsity list. That usually got me going again and motivated to do the things I needed to do." And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a real growth mindset. In the face of adversity, what are we doing? Are we just going back to our comfort zone, or are we actually pushing through and finding the motivation and determination to continue going? And then the last one, an oldie but a goodie, is Thomas Edison. So you guys most people know this story, right? That Thomas Edison, the story goes that he, was 10,000 tries before he, failures before he actually made the light bulb. It wasn't quite that many. And according to his own records, he kept a journal of all the times that he failed. It was 2,774 attempts. Okay, I don't know about you, but after about 100, I'd be like, I'm done. Right? I don't know, like that is real tenacity to go 2,774 times. And what he kept saying to himself was, I quit until I get what I'm after, right? That the negative results were just as helpful as the positive results to him to keep moving on and find out how to figure out the bamboo filament, which is what he finally had a breakthrough around for the light bulb. So just think about these 4 stories and how they might relate to your life, right? These are famous people, but we all have things that are setbacks, or where we're told no, or where things happen and we maybe have more of a fixed mindset than a growth mindset. So why do you think this is important, and how does it impact you? Anybody want to share, like, why do you think having a growth mindset is important? You could just come off mute. You don't even have to raise your hand. Let's see who's brave. People are like, oh my gosh, what's happening? What do you think?
I'll be brave.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I think for me, having that growth mindset and being positive and pushing through things is just I say it's part of my DNA. My parents were the exact same way, but I don't ever want to be that other person. So having that growth mindset pushes me to stay in a space where I'm continually learning and growing and taking on new ideas so that I can continue to be a better version of myself.
That's awesome. I love that. A better version of yourself, right? That's motivating. Good. Anybody else? Why is it important to you? Like, why is it important to have a growth mindset at work or in general? You can just come off mute and then shout it out. What do you think? There's no right answer or wrong answer.
I think for me, for the longest time, I was fulfilling my mom's wishes, and now I could see that I already fulfilled my mom's wishes, and I'm continuing to grow. personally
Oh,
and
I
for future
love that.
generations.
Yes. So you're doing it for yourself now, right? Like that growth mindset is helping you expand, not just what expectations might be. Those are really great answers. So really both perfect. And I think hits on our willingness to change and grow, right? If we have a growth mindset or believe in this philosophy, which again, I think we all want to, but then we get a little bit hijacked by our amygdalas and get a little bit fixed in certain areas. But we're probably, if we have this belief that there's actually the ability to change and grow, we're probably going to spend more time towards, making ourselves, I love what Jackie said, a better version of ourselves, right? Be great. And what Karen said, it's like not just for other people, but our own goals, our own ambitious goals. We'll be less worried about others. I don't know about you, but like there's a lot of comparison is the thief of joy that goes around. And so, we individuals with a growth mindset are really typically stay in their lane a little bit better and are less worried about what other people think and are typically less stressed, believe it or not. While they're very motivated and very much going for the gusto, if you will, they're typically more calm and collected because they know that they have the tools and the ability to actually affect change. So I think those are all, in addition to all the things that we can think of, right? That's a good reason to have a growth mindset at work. Okay, so let's get some tools, right? I come to these things all the time and I'm like, okay, this is great, but what do I do about it? So tool number one, if you'll get the slide deck later, but you can make a growth and a fixed mindset list. So this is where kind of maybe some journaling or some writing some things down. So when you make your list, I would just make a normal T list, right? Like, where do I have a growth mindset? Where am I pretty good at this? And where do I need to just have a little bit of improvement, right? But you have to be honest with yourself and you don't have to show the list. I'm going to show my list, which always gives me a little redneck, like, oh my gosh, vulnerability at its best, right? But you want to be honest because this is where you actually can affect change. When you look at where you're fixed, you can look at how can I make some actions or some, baby steps to improve that. So here's some questions to help. I'm not going to read all of them, but for example, in the last 7 days, where have you displayed a fixed mindset, right? So think about, okay, at work or in life, where have I maybe tend to be a little bit more fixed? Where have I displayed a growth mindset? How did they work out? Which mindset worked out and why, right? And then if you're stuck, what you might do is think of a friend or a family member or a mentor, somebody famous who spends their time in either a growth or a fixed mindset and ask, what are the traits that they have that you might identify in yourself? Because sometimes it is, I will tell you, it's hard to see our own fixed mindset because it's a little bit of a blind spot for us. But when we can think about other people, it's like, oh, me too. That's me, right? So when we think about, gosh, that was really irritating that person was just arguing with me about being right. It's like, oh, then I did that with my husband, or I did that with, like somebody else. So you can sometimes see growth and fixed mindset in other people. So these are some questions that you might ask yourself about both growth and fixed mindset and how to identify it. So here's mine. This is my handwriting. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to put this in the PDF, but I'll put it in the PDF to send to Yvonne. So on my growth mindset, this is where I feel like I do a pretty good job. Like, I feel like when I get constructive criticism, I don't take it too personal. I try to modify my behavior accordingly. I'm pretty persistent with my goals. I like to help other people grow. I do have a belief that everybody can learn and develop. So I don't think you're just born with it, and like, too bad, you can't do anything about it. I'm a reader. I love learning, love things like this, like webinars. I love that the Fort Collins Chamber does the Tuesday Talent Series. It's so awesome. I love to meet new people. I feel like I know my weaknesses and that they're able to be developed. And I'm pretty good at developing confidence by just jumping in and going for it. Okay, so that's a fun list to read. Now I got the fixed list. Uh-oh. Remember I told you everybody has fixed traits. And so here's some of mine. When I get negative feedback, not constructive criticism, but people that might just be it feels maybe not helpful, I don't always take that well. So see the difference, constructive versus maybe just berating or negative feedback that's not helpful. I could be better about listening for what are the nuggets in that. I sometimes have a fixed mindset that, quote, I'm not good at technology. So, when I do presentations and my laptop does something crazy or I can't get the Zoom screen up, it's like, I'm just not good at technology. That's a fixed mindset for me, right? Like where I might have this belief that I just can't do it. I sometimes play it safe and don't have a high risk tolerance. So it's like, okay, if I was just going to go for it, what would I, maybe pull out all the stops on? I have a fixed mindset sometimes about asking for help. So like, while I'd like to think, oh, I'm so good at asking for help, I'm not the best at it. And I take on a lot. And I think I could be better in the world of, growing at work by asking for help. My hamster wheel, do we all have a hamster in our head? I named mine. You just name yours. Mine's named Maynard. And I named it, and how it deals with my failures and mistakes. It can sometimes just not talk to me like a friend. It just gets going on the wheel. And I can see that is maybe an area where I can have more growth opportunity. Sometimes I'll say certain things like in the world, like, oh, it is what it is. I especially have this philosophy about politics. This is not we will not get into a political discussion, but sometimes I'm like, oh, well, it is what it is. And it's like, no, Chalice, have a growth mindset about it, right? Go campaign or go knock on doors or speak out or write a letter to the editor for things that you're passionate about. That would be more of a growth mindset than just, kind of throwing your hands up and thinking this big system is not, I can't influence it. Trying new things out of my comfort zone. I especially think this is good when I'm thinking about, I'll give you an example. Actually, I'll come off the screen. So I went to lunch with a friend. This is probably 6 months ago. And she wanted to talk to me. I live in Greeley. She lives in Fort Collins. And she said, I'd like to start a nonprofit or a fundraising opportunity for nonprofits. And so she does line dancing. And she said, I want to teach line dancing and have people come pay, and then the nonprofit would benefit from it. And she said, would you help me brainstorm nonprofits in Greeley to do that with, blah, blah, blah. I said, sure. But the first question she asks me when we sit down about the line dancing conversation is, do you like line dancing? So she says this to me. And you know what I say? I'm not a line dancer. Okay, so I say that I have never line danced in my entire life. Like, I don't even know how I can say I'm not a line dancer, in the world of growth versus fixed mindset. And it occurred to me later. I actually called her later and I was like, okay, I need to probably at least try it before I can say I'm not a line dancer, right? It might be my most favorite way to exercise or enjoy with my husband or something like that. So trying new things like eating at an Indian restaurant or trying a different type of restaurant, sometimes that gets me too. So I'll get back to my list here. And then sometimes I'm pretty good at habits, but certain habits can sometimes get me, like drinking my water. I want to do Duolingo to learn Spanish. And so sometimes I'm not always have the most growth mindset about it. It's like I get a little fixed in my ways about those things and just either give up or don't try new habits or whatever. So that's my list. What about you guys? Do you have an example that you'd want to share in the chat or come off of screen and give an example of where you might have a fixed mindset? Anybody?
I'm definitely a it is what it is kind of person too.
Oh yeah, Allie, good. Thanks for
Yeah.
admitting that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see myself in that too. Good.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Other fixed mindset examples?
So I work for Pathways Hospice and I've been in this role for about 7 months, but I was a community liaison here previously. And so my fixed mindset as a liaison would be, that's not in my control. Right.
Oh, good
But
one,
in my new
Jackie.
seat, it's in my control. And I'm reminded of
Yeah.
that pretty often because I have to like shut that off and think, okay, how do we brainstorm through this? Because it is now in my control.
Right, good. So not in my control. Good one. That's a good fixed mindset. And by the way, sometimes there are things that aren't in our control, right? Or sometimes there are things that they really are what they are, but we can just see where it might stop us in certain areas, right? So it doesn't mean that we're putting our head in the sand and thinking, oh, I can control everything, but we are looking at areas where we might just need to have a little bit more growth mindset about that, especially at work. Yeah. Anybody else? Example of a fixed mindset? I always think it's helpful to hear other people's because it's like, oh, me too.
Well, Chalice, I could share, when I was a little kid, I was always told I wasn't very good at math. I always got all straight A's and a
Yes,
C in
good
math.
one. Yes.
You know, I'm surprised as a grown-up adult that my math's actually really pretty good. And so I've had to change that mindset that was kind of just told to me. And it's the arithmetic I don't do well. 2 + 2 can be 5, but it's the math I do get right.
Nice. That's really good. Yeah, that's a common one, right? What's something you've been told your whole life, like, or that you've maybe adopted. I'm not good at art. I'm not good at math. Those are good. That's a good one. Thanks for sharing. Okay, good. We'll keep moving. So the step number 2, once you've kind of made your growth in your fixed mindset, is to seek feedback and help. Uh-oh, on my fixed mindset. So this, I'll need to work on this one, but I'm teasing. So look for feedback and help. So using feedback to grow, mainly because we just sometimes can't see our own blind spots. So asking for somebody else, especially people that you trust, not just everybody, right, to provide you with feedback can be a really important insight and help you develop your fixed mindset list about where you need to grow. Because sometimes people can see it easier for us, you know what I mean, than we can see it for ourselves. And then the second step is to ask for help when necessary. So if there are things, you know, that are in your way and somebody might be able to help train you, they might be able to help mentor you, they might be able to help provide continuing ed or education about it. This is a great, or just work with you one-on-one about it. Asking for help is not a weakness, you know. When you seek assistance from others, it really is a great way to activate your growth mindset because it means you're getting out of your comfort zone and really getting into that messy middle in order to affect change. And then the last one is just be open to, notice I put constructive feedback. So you want to be open to that constructive feedback because it typically leads to areas where you might, again, it might be in your blind spot or you might know about it. I kind of have a rule of 3. If 3 people have told me the same thing about something to change over and over, it's like, oh, I probably need to be listening a little bit more. You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be rule of 3, but for sure, if 3 people, the same, 3 different people have told you the same thing in different contexts, it might be an indicator that could be an area ripe for growing. So once we got the feedback, right, and we asked for help, now we're going to kind of make a yet list, the power of yet. I think one of the things that can be frustrating about having a growth versus a fixed mindset, especially at work, especially about what Jackie was saying, sometimes we don't always have control over the activities or the trajectory that we're on. But if we harness the power of yet, which basically means sometimes I think we get frustrated because we want to do all of it at once, right? We identify this fixed mindset. It's like, oh my gosh, how do I take all of it on? It may not be possible. So creating, there's skills and talents that you're just not good at yet. And I love that concept because it's none of us are going to come out of the chute perfect. My Spanish skills aren't going to be great on the first try. I have to keep practicing, but they're better than they were, a year ago when I started, or like a few years ago when I started Duolingo. Just knowing that, that it is a work in progress, I think is an important concept to keep in your mind. So you want to put a plan together, make baby steps for taking action to learn and grow. So let's use line dancing as an example, right? If that was really something I just wanted to try, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to sign up for line dancing classes or an extended period of time. Maybe I just find line dancing one night, right? Like at the Sundance, I'm going to just go for one night of line dancing and see if I like it. That would be part of the plan. So investigate where they are, put it on my calendar, ask a friend to go for accountability, and then go, right? Breaking it down so that it's not so overwhelming. And I know line dancing is kind of a silly example, but perhaps there's something in your job that is a really big, you need a degree or you need a certification that might be kind of hard. You need to affect change in an area that perhaps you don't have a lot of control over and you're relying on a committee or a lot of people to weigh in. Think about what you have control over and think about how you might plan some baby steps for action for that. And then I think this is it's easy to say, we say it to kids, we say it, in our what we should say, but then when it happens, I'm not sure we're always the best at it, but to recognize it's not all going to go right the first time. Think about the examples that I gave, right? Michael Jordan not being on the varsity team and Oprah getting let go after just 7 months of her news career. I mean, all of those are great examples. Thomas Edison, 2,774 tries on the light bulb. Holy cow. I would have given up probably a lot sooner than that. So just recognizing that the mistakes are just as valuable in terms of the learning opportunity as when we hit the nail on the head. But it will help us close the gap. It will help us close the gap in terms of what we're trying to get to and the goal that we're trying to accomplish. So then we want to put it into practice, right? So this is your yet list. So I actually have a yet list. It's the big word yet, and I wrote down all the things on the inside of the list, YET, that I have not accomplished yet, but I would like to, that are on my growth list, right? So, some of it's like on my yet list, it's climb a 14er, which I'm totally scared about climbing a 14er because, that just seems very hard. Like people do it all the time, but it's really out of my comfort zone. There's other things that are on my yet list that are related to work, but you want to start thinking about areas that you'd like to get out of your comfort zone and being specific about making that list. So when you brainstorm those ideas, right, with my yet list that I have, it's helpful because I can start seeing, okay, where's the puck going to be? What do I want to skate towards? And then how do I back into the actions that would create that? When we're clear about what we'd like to grow into, and we have a kind of a positive growth mindset about that, then we have a destination in mind, and we're not just kind of aimlessly wandering around in our comfort zone. We know what we might want to accomplish. Now, sometimes it may not be, may not be as specific, like it may not be a SMART goal, right? But maybe you're feeling like, gosh, I'm just really frustrated with my job and I want a new job. And you don't know what that new job is. You might just write down a new job that lights me up or uses my gifts and talents. It doesn't have to be, I want XYZ job at, State Farm Agency 101. It doesn't have to be so specific, but now your brain will start working on, what do I need to do to grow into that position? Right? Well, maybe I need to learn more about finance, or I need to learn more about insurance, or I need to grow these certain communication skills. And so making the list will help you have a target for where you want to go. But the idea is not necessarily to commit to doing all of them, or maybe any of them at this time. It's just to have a yet list, right? On the outside of my yet list is all of the things that I feel like I've taken a chance on, where I got out of my comfort zone and I'm doing well. So that's affirming, right? Like on my YET, on the inside are the things I'd like to do. And on the outside, I've decorated it with things like, oh, I took a chance on that. For example, starting my own business, right? As a solopreneur, that's like a big chance. I call it like letting go of the side of the swimming pool. Okay, I don't get a paycheck unless I go out and prospect for it. And there's no regular insurance. And I have to figure out how to do payroll taxes on myself. And all of those things I had to learn, that goes on the outside list. And there's lots of things about being a solopreneur that are still on the inside of the yet list, right? Because it's a work in progress. Okay, then after you've made the yet list, choose just one or two things that you'd like to begin to move the needle on. So with our brain, right, you just want to strategize baby steps, not 1 to 10. So it's not like, okay, I went to this webinar with the chamber and I came back, I'm just quitting my job today. Okay, maybe, but maybe there's a 1 to 2, right? Like if job satisfaction is on the list and you want a new job, maybe it's the skills that are in between there before you actually give your notice. But our brains often resist when we have two actions that are too big. So we try to take too big of a bite, your amygdala will revolt and tell you that that's just not way too out of your comfort zone, and will probably argue back into the things that you don't want to be doing. So choose 1 or 2 things, but then 1 or 2 things to do with those that are baby steps, that are small enough that then you can actually move the needle. And once you've accomplished that, then you're going to do it 1 more time, 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4, and 4 to 5, until you've reached the destination, and then start it all over again, right? New things go on your yet list. And then get accountability and take action. So this is really, the way to have a growth mindset is, it's sort of like having a yoga attitude and a yoga practice. If you have a yoga attitude, like I think yoga is great. That sounds like a great thing to do, but you don't actually have a yoga practice, you can see it's totally different. So having a growth mindset and a growth practice, the practice is where the action occurs. And so moving the needle on just some of these small things, and they may not seem that significant. It's okay. You're still getting towards the destination, right? You're on the journey, you're on the path, and that can be really super important. Okay, more sharing. Oh my gosh, who knew that this is going to be the sharing hour, right? Anybody want to share where you'd like to have more of a growth mindset? This is the nerve-wracking part. Like, oh my gosh, all these people are going to hear me say that I want to have a growth mindset about such and such. Oh, Amy, I can't hear you. Let's see. But I appreciate you're having a growth mindset. Can't hear you now. You want to put it in the chat? Try one more time. This is where my fixed mindset of I'm not good at technology, I don't know what to say, right? That's coming up. It's like, oh my gosh. Okay, while Amy's figuring it out, anybody else want to share a growth mindset? Maybe she'll put it in the chat. I'll watch the chat and see. Yvonne can help me watch the chat too. Who else? Anybody where you'd like to practice more of a growth mindset? Anybody?
Maybe
go.
constructive criticism.
Oh yes, good. I love Allie. She's like, I like the stretch happened, and like
Maybe.
maybe. Okay, good. It's just on a yet list. I love that. So you don't have to totally go to the mat with it. That's good. But see, recognizing that it's maybe a blind spot for you or something you'd like to just improve a little bit, way to go, right? It's going to be helpful for you. That's awesome.
I feel like I'm okay telling everybody else they should use it as they should use it as, but then when it comes to me, I'm like, oh, they didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, that wasn't that. That's not for me. Good. Oh my gosh, Allie, that's great. Great feedback. Okay, Karen, you had one too.
I think for me, I'm so a big picture girl that I have a goal that I forgot the little steps that I took is getting there.
Yes.
And then one of my mentors told me when I started my business, even those little ones, put them down. And then after a year, I'm like, oh yeah, I did those.
Good job. Yeah. So recognizing the little steps in between, having more of a growth mindset about the process, not just the destination. That's really great. Yeah. Anybody else where you'd like to practice more of a growth mindset? Jackie, that's great. Thanks.
Not certain if this applies, but that little imposter thing that we do when things aren't going the way we want them to, and that little voice says to you, well, you shouldn't be doing this, and then the other side's like, no, you got this, you can do it. And so battling that space of, am I really pretending, or am I really good at this, or we're just gonna see, let's just move.
Good. So ignoring the imposter syndrome a little bit more. That's a great growth mindset, right? To just lean in and work on that confidence. That's awesome. Good. Anybody else? Yvonne?
Alice, I could add, you reminded me, I do yoga in the morning, and Cassandra on my website that I use every day, she always says it's about the destination, it's about the journey, not the destination, right?
Yeah,
And so I
right.
apply it to my yoga, but I don't apply it to I do yoga and I don't apply it anywhere else in my life, right? That sometimes when you're at work and you have that hard work to do, you're just kind of, I got that hard work to do, instead of like, this is the journey of my work, right? And
Yes, this is the work,
not letting
right?
it be such a big deal. So I appreciate
That's really good. I love that. That's good. Yeah, to just hang in there with it. That's awesome. Oh, Amy, send me your growth mindset later. I'm so sorry we couldn't hear you on the headset. That's good. Okay, so thanks everybody for sharing what your growth mindset, and hopefully you're coming up with some for yourself, right? About where you might have a growth mindset at work. The reminder is that it is going, it's for sure going to be uncomfortable. And the reason for that is because your amygdala is going to argue for your comfort zone. So you know that it's working when you're uncomfortable. When you're like Allie, who had to put her hands up, like, I don't know, maybe, I'm just not sure, right? When that happens, it probably means you're on the right track. So like Yvonne said, just lean in and hopefully practice that. So the last tip is to be kind to yourself in all of this. And I love what you guys shared about having a growth mindset, because they're really, it's important work to do, right? Like Jackie talked about imposter syndrome, Allie talking about constructive criticism, even Yvonne talking about, gosh, not getting frustrated with the journey versus the destination. That can be hard, you guys. And so I want to remind you to be gentle with yourself in the growth versus fixed mindset, because we don't want to beat ourselves up. So if we're tending to be a little bit more, oh my goodness, I have more of a fixed mindset in this way, and I'm not sure how to move the needle. We don't want, like Jackie said, the little devil on our shoulder or whatever, the little talking hamster on our, that's not helpful to win the conversation. So this looks like self-compassion. And so self-compassion is really the easiest way to remember it, is to talk to yourself like you would a friend. So, when you're in the throes of it at work and things are in meltdown, or it's a dumpster fire, or you're just like, what is happening? And having a growth mindset is particularly hard. Talk to yourself like you would a friend, like think about what you would say to somebody else. And instead of scolding yourself for the fixed mindset, have a little bit more compassion, and, remember, don't take it personal. Just be mindful. Sometimes practice noticing. Every time I teach this class, I find more of my fixed mindset traits I could add to that list I shared earlier. And again, I feel like I'm a pretty green and growing kind of gal, but I know that it creeps up on me, and I get in my comfort zone and could stretch myself a little bit more and have more of a growth mindset, especially at work, but in life in general. So some of this is just noticing and paying attention to where there might be opportunities for growth and improvement. And the last is just to keep practicing, right? Be committed to practicing your growth mindset. And again, it's not just having an attitude of growth. Like, that sounds great. Just sounds really great to have an attitude of growth. It's really, okay, what could I do today to get out of my comfort zone, right? When my husband asks me for dinner, it's like, okay, let's not just go to the same 3 places we always go to. Let's try a new business on the chamber list. Let's try, try a different type of movie to watch. Let's get out of our comfort zone, even in those little areas, because all of that adds up and makes a difference. Okay, does anybody know this show besides Fran? I know Fran does. Ted Lasso. Okay, Sarah's shaking her head. This is my favorite show. Oh my gosh, if you haven't watched it, I would highly encourage you to watch it. It's just such a great show. But I always like to end all of my talks with, this is all entertainment. Like, it was fun. We had fun today, but it's all entertainment if we don't do something. And so I would encourage you, if you're able, to just write on a sticky note before you get too much into the rest of your day and you're off to lunch, what's one thing that you want to do after participating in this workshop? and then take action on that, right? Just 1 to 2. It might be something little, right? It might be just to make a yet list. It might be, I'm going to make that growth versus fixed mindset list, and I'm going to share it with my manager. I'm going to brainstorm with a mentor about how I could ask for help better. All of those things would be great ideas for how you might have more of a growth mindset in the workplace. Anybody have one they want to share? I won't even take the screen share off. So you don't have to look at each other. Holy cow, nerve-wracking. Anybody, something you want to do?
Read a book.
Jackie? What'd you say, Fran? Read a book?
Read a book.
Nice,
Yeah, I
read a
started
book.
reading a book.
Okay, good. Reading a book. That's awesome. Good. Jackie.
I love the recognize the not yet. That's really great. And I kind of liken it to like a bucket list
Yeah,
or like my job.
I
And
love that.
I'm making notes inside that not yet, as you were talking, thinking that this is very useful.
That's awesome. You know what, Yvonne, when I send the PowerPoint, I'll send my little yet visual so that people, if they want to print that off, then you guys can have it as a PDF. It's kind of a fun one, but it's like a growth bucket list. I love that, Jackie, of calling it that. Anybody else? Something you'd like to do out of participating in the workshop?
I'm definitely going to make the T list of what I think I do good and what I don't, and then work on maybe selecting one of those to even take to my weekly supervision and work on with my leadership.
Oh, that's a great idea, right? That's asking for help. And, that vulnerability is going to pay off, Allie, because I think they're going to be able to, see traits that you do really well and things that will help grow the organization and you as an employee. So I love that. That's a great idea to share it with somebody. So whatever you decided on, hopefully you'll take action, and hopefully you had some fun today. I do have this is the shameless pitch. I do have a goal setting workshop that's coming up. You can find it on my website. I also have a newsletter, and I do corporate, life and executive coaching if you're interested in that. So all of that's on my website. But I just want to thank the Fort Collins Chamber again for having me as part of the Tuesday Talent training. I just really appreciate the opportunity and Yvonne's leadership. She's just an amazing person. I have to just describe her as my kryptonite. So whenever she asks me to do something, I'm like, oh, Yvonne, okay, yes, kryptonite, which is good. We all have kryptonite, right? So I appreciate her having me get a little bit out of my growth zone and do a Zoom call with the Fort Collins. I mean, I love to do Zoom calls and I love training like this, but I appreciate the opportunity to be part of the Tuesday Talent Series. So thanks, Yvonne. Thanks everybody for coming, and hopefully you are able to have a fixed or a growth mindset at work and get out of your comfort zone a little bit more.
Thank you, Chalice. I just from everybody's smiles on their faces and nods on their heads, I think we all learned something today. We were challenged. We have some tools that we can take with us, actual activities that we can do. So we so appreciate that very, very much. And you're someone that I look to for this kind of work and to help lift all of us. So I hope that what we all learned today help us personally, but also our own coworkers, or maybe those that we supervise, and maybe even of our kids, right? Our own families and our relationships.
That's a great point. Yeah.
We appreciate that very much. So we appreciate you for joining today. As Chalice said, we've recorded this, so I'll send you the recording and all the slides, and we'll also add that other document that Chalice referenced. And next week's Tuesday Talent Series on the 24th is Registered Apprenticeships, the Future of Work. And I don't know if you know, but Colorado is one of the few states that has actually been designated by the Department of Labor to be able to register apprenticeships through the state agency, not federally. So we have the folks coming to talk to us about how you can start apprenticeships and register apprenticeships. And I was a lucky attendee with 40 of us that went to Switzerland to learn about the dual education system. And once you see how amazing apprenticeships can be for high school kids, and helping them on their pathways, you will want to sign up an apprenticeship in your business as well. So I hope you can join us for that one next week. And thank you all for joining us today. And I hope for a wonderful growth mindset afternoon for all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chalice.
Bye,
very much.
Yvonne.
You
Thank
bet. Thank you
you.
so much. Talk to you soon.